Finally, we are back after a long summer break. Welcome to the Lausitzring. We're here with terrible weather conditions. However, it's certainly going to be a fantastic race weekend. And who knows, maybe Marco Wittmann truly will already snatch the title this weekend. We will see. Would be the first time since a new DTM in 2000. But now let's talk about Mercedes-Benz. In the last 14 years, Mercedes managed to win here 10 times. And the last man who won here was Gary Paffett. Now, Gary, this season is not going brilliantly for you, but what are the chances of you actually ending up on the podium here, despite the terrible weather conditions? We really have very special conditions here today.
Yeah, I mean, this circuit historically has been very good for Mercedes and good for myself. I've won here 3 times, and you know, last year in 2013 we had a tough year, but I won here, which was definitely the highlight of the season. So it's a good circuit for us, and I'm looking forward to the race. And as you say, with the conditions like this, we're not going to get any practice time really, and straight into qualifying. So it's a bit of a lottery, especially in these conditions. So who knows? It could go very well, or it could go very badly. But we'll see. We'll do our best, and hopefully, yeah, with these conditions, we can make the most of it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Best of luck, Gary. And now let's go on a lap with Bruno Spengler.
Hi guys, welcome here in Lausitzring. I will bring you now to a fast lap on this track. So here we come in the oval corner, which can be challenging in the rain sometimes if there is a lot of water on the track. Main straight, upshifting, it's pretty bumpy here on this main straight, as you can see. Now the braking point is very late and very tricky as well, because it's bumpy through the whole braking phase, so that's a bit of a tricky side. Now we come here on the left-hander, just a little lift in 3rd gear, pretty quick corner. Just a little braking now for the right-hander, 2nd gear. Lift a bit for the left, still 2nd gear, and then early on the power, also difficult there because of the bumps. The next one is a interesting corner. You can brake very, very late, 50 at the 50 sign. And early on the power again, very bumpy the exit here. And we go into that fast right-hander, which is also tricky and bumpy, and important to be early on the power for the long straight behind. Could be overtaking there in the next corner. Now comes a heavy braking down to 2nd gear. Early on power, the car straight. The right-hander is flat here in 4th gear. Now downshift 2 gears and brake deep into the corner, up to the curb on the power. Then be early on the power and the car straight for the long straight, very important. A lot of overtakings will come here with the DRS during the race. And now we're back on start finish, and it wasn't a too bad lap, I would say. I do a last one.
So thanks very much to Bruno Spengler then, giving us a hot lap here at the Lausitzring. And, well, hot laps are something we've not had enough of here at the Lausitzring. Alongside me, David, we've just seen a very, very shortened free practice session. And there you could see the results of that free practice session, which, to be fair, was led by Augusto Farfus with a 1:22.622. The reason for not very much running, actually not because of rain, not because of any other reason other than very low cloud and a bit of fog.
And the net result of that is that the medical helicopter, should it ever have been needed, couldn't have taken off. And so visibility on track wasn't a problem. It was the low cloud preventing the medical helicopter from flying. And so therefore, at this point in the weekend, they've normally had the 15-minute rollout yesterday and then 2 hours of running today in free practice. They haven't had 2 hours, they've had 15 minutes on a road that was damp but drying. And by the end of the session, the best times were coming on slick tyres. So drivers go into this qualifying session with virtually no data. They've had precious little track running. This potentially is going to make this a fascinating qualifying session, because it really does become a lottery.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we're seeing those cars getting out very, very early on here. And, well, of course, the qualifying in DTM now in 3 parts. And, well, we're going to see, as we ride on board with our championship leader, Marco Wittmann, who can nail it through qualifying with very little running in free practice to give them preparation for this all-important qualifying session to set up the grid for tomorrow's race. There is Jamie Green, who crosses the timing line now, and we put the clock on Jamie Green to see what he can deliver for us. He was not outstanding in free practice, it has to be said.
And he's not outstanding at turn 1, is he?
Now, off air, you made the point, David, that you wondered whether any of these drivers, towards the end of the session, everybody was on slicks. They'd gone out on wets early on in the free practice session. We're only talking about 20, 25 minutes ago, perhaps half an hour ago. Would anyone use wets in this part of qualifying just to put in a banker lap?
Because on slicks, on a greasy circuit, there's always that slight extra risk. The road is good enough for slicks once they've got temperature in them. There's more pressure on a driver now than there is in free practice, and you've just seen a tiny, tiny little error come from Jamie Green. The last thing you want at the start of Q1 is to go off the road. Now, the way of deducing all of this is to have a quick look at the sidewalls of the tyres. Blue means wets, and Jamie Green is on slicks, and I do suspect, because you can see where the dry part of the road is, that everybody will be on slicks, and Joey Hand is off the road, and that's exactly the point I was getting to, is that early on in the session, if you make a mistake, qualifying is effectively over, and it is Joey Hand who is off the road and in the gravel. Now, that could even be a red flag, because in the Porsche qualifying session that ran a bit earlier on in the day, with people going off and being relatively close and precarious to the edge of the road, it threw a red almost instantly. Jamie Green will do the benchmark time, and we have a red flag.
Yes,
we have a red, and it's because of Joey Hand.
Well, we got a time from Jamie Green just before the red came out, and it was a 1:21.461. So already we're into times that are quicker than free practice was. Here it is in replay. So Hand just not able to make that turn, was he?
No, he ran out of road, he gets on the wet grass, and at that point you're a passenger, he slides across the road, and even though wet gravel compacts and sometimes you can drive out of it, because he'd already tried to slow down the car on the grass and he scrubbed off a bit of speed on the tarmac, there was no momentum when he got to the gravel, and so it just comes to rest. Frustrating. So Joey Hand then is out of the session, and whether or not the race director feels benevolent and will let him back in, I'm not entirely convinced. See him spinning the wheels, but actually because the momentum's gone, all he's done is dig himself further in. So really, I'm afraid you have to question, in terms of Joey Hand doing all of that, what the point was. He didn't achieve anything to dig himself out the other side, and frustration for the American. The type of circuit, really, I suppose, that is familiar to American drivers, this sort of roval road course on the middle and the oval on the outside. You start on the oval, you then go onto the infield, there's a quick burst on the back part of the oval, then you back to the infield, and then you rejoin the oval up before what would be turn 4 on the oval course itself. And the infield, very fast and flowing, some good long fast corners there as well. So it's a popular circuit, this, with the drivers. It's a good facility, of course, in the big grandstand. It's a bit like Rockingham, for example, in the UK. You can see the bulk of the circuit, good with the fans, and it's, even though the spectators have had a trying day, they have stayed to the end of the day and finally are getting some DTM running, sort of, because we didn't have many minutes before Jay Hand did this and put it in the gravel.
And what we should mention with regards to DTM and their liking of the Lausitzring is, of course, a lot of testing is carried out here.
Indeed, and Matthias Ekström, I think, has said that this is the circuit of all on the DTM calendar he knows the most, because he's done endless laps here in testing. And Ekström, just to go to the business end of all of this, the championship, he's now arriving here joint second in the title race with Edo Mortara, but Marco Wittmann on 120 points very nearly has double the score plus of everybody else, and all he needs is fourth place out of this for the weekend. Now, we are going to go straight into Q2. Joey Hand's red flag means that Q1 is over and the screen has been reset and we are into Q2. Now, I would imagine that will be everybody that will go through into that. Apart from Joey Hand, as the cause of the stoppage, he will go no further. But as everybody, or rather nobody, other than Jamie Green, had done a lap time, if you're following all of this, everybody's allowed into Q2. We had it at Brands Hatch, if you remember, a few years ago in the 3-part qualifying days when it was the season that everybody seemed to have dramas going into Druids. Over the brow, brake, and slide off into the gravel. And was it Catherine Legg who was the first casualty? And so the first part of qualifying was red flagged. It wasn't restarted because, of course, this all has to be done to a time slot for live television. television,
Yes.
and hence everybody was moved through into the next part of qualifying. So this now gives you 22 starters down to 8. This is going to be manic.
It is going to be manic. It's going to be very, very exciting as well. We can see from our high vantage point up in the main grandstand that Joey Hand has managed to dig himself out of the gravel. So he's got the car pointing in the right direction now and heading back, but he will take no further part in qualifying. So unfortunately, Joey Hand then in the Crown Plaza liveried machine is the first to be out of, what was a first part of qualifying, which was cut really rather short.
So that's a case of handover.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So Joey Hand goes no further other than back to the pit lane, and he will start at the rear of the grid. So big frustration for him, and to an extent, frustration for everybody else, because they've just lost another 8 minutes of track time. That's what we had on the clock when the red flag came out.
And I don't know whether it's good for me to mention this now or not, but in our many discussions today, as we've been eagerly anticipating some running on this track, in looking at the weather, and you and I have almost become amateur meteorologists, haven't we?
Very amateur, yes.
Yeah, very amateur. Is that the forecast for tomorrow is not brilliant.
It's not brilliant in a kind of really bad way, and this is a concern to everybody. Now, before we get to Q2, let's hear from Augusto Farfus, the man fastest in free practice.
Yeah, Augusto, you were fastest this morning in free practice. Very, very short free practice. How is it feeling for the qualifying now?
Yeah, the session, it's a crazy day. I'm happy we can run because there is a lot of fans here which came over to look the session, to enjoy the day, and unfortunately could not give them the show they were expecting. But now qualifying is running. It's a bit of a gamble because the track will be changing during the entire qualifying. Hopefully we can get a good balance, a good strategy, and put the car on pole.
And quite frankly, how tough is it to drive with such little data information?
It's very tough because the track, as I said, keeps on changing. We did not have time to do any setup change at all because we had only 15 minutes free practice where we just went from wets to slicks, and now we are on qualifying, and now there is Parc Fermé. So today the job was down to the engineers to prepare a good setup, a good car, and we just have to rely on them.
Best of luck. Thank you very much, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Verena, very much. And Augusto telling us exactly what we predicted would be the case. They haven't had an awful lot of data because they've had so little running. So Augusto indicating there just how reliant on the engineers that they are in terms of delivering them a package that he's going to do for this qualifying. And now, very little data from a shortened free practice session. And now, all of a sudden, the qualifying session's been shortened as well. And as you say, this Q2 is going to be manic because everyone, bar one, is in.
Yes, we don't normally get 22 cars in this middle segment of qualifying, which has now got the cars making their way down to the end of the pit lane, everybody keen to get out there and try and maximise the time allowed, and more importantly, you want to be first out or last out, and therefore away from traffic. And so Timo Scheider it is who will be the first man out. If you're not at the front of the queue, there is really no point being 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and getting mired in the traffic. Leave it 20 seconds and be the last man out and try and buy yourself that clear track space.
You're absolutely right. And I wonder if that's what's going through Marco Wittmann, the championship leader's mind at the moment, as we see him still in the garage there at the Mo. Yep. There's the cars all lined up then. And as you say, Timo Scheider is going to be the first to show when the lights to the left of your screen in the Decra box there go from red to green. And we get what is effectively Q2 underway. So, not much running already today. Q1 shortened by Joey Hand binning it and putting it in the gravel. And we've now got more cars in Q2 than ever before.
Exactly right, and on a greasy circuit still. Oh. And there is still the chance that people might make errors and go off. So you've got more traffic, you've got lack of running, you've got tyres that you need to get up to temperature. You have got, for the purposes of this, of course, a limited amount of time for this middle segment to get underway. So you have, for this, the cars running for just 11 minutes. Now, that said, the clock has shown us 21 minutes, and I'm just wondering whether they're going to add the Q3 time onto Q2 or whether the clock will be adjusted in a moment. And indeed, we're getting news that Q1's time is being added to Q2. So forget the 11 minutes, it's up to 21. So effectively, they're going to add the two elements together. And you've also just seen, I think, on the message line, news about people being under investigation already, and that was Pascal Wehrlein.
Pascal Wehrlein under investigation, and as you can see, the cars then, as the light goes green,
have 11 minutes. So the clock has just been reset, contrary to what I was telling you. Now it's gone off the screen.
And it will be reshaped.
It might well be reset in a moment. We'll see.
So.
We'll see.
I think probably race control are having as tough a time of it as anyone else, aren't they?
Yes.
In terms of having to reorganise everything here. Okay, so what we have is we have the cars out on track.
We have 20 minutes and 47 seconds.
Okay.
The timing screen that we have in the box has now been reset. This is all going remarkably well, as you can tell. And do I now see spots of rain on the camera lens just to jolly this along even further? Anything is possible in this qualifying session.
Oh, right, greens. We have 20 and a half minutes. And I think you're right. You know, it wasn't this camera that we were looking at a few moments ago that was showing us spots of rain. We would, you know, it would be indicative that we would get spots of rain on an onboard like that, but it was one of the high-out cameras, so, well.
And it might be a bit of spray, because now you've got more cars out. In theory, they should be helping to dry the road, but it is still a very grey day here at the Lausitzring. The Euro Speedway, to give it its full title, and there again, spots of rain on the camera lens, so if it is going to get even damper and more slippery, a wiper on look for Scheider, and he's the first man on the road, so there's no spray in his face. If it is going to get greasier and the times are going to go up, you've got to get a lap time in right at the start of the session.
And that's exactly what Scheider needs to do now. We're watching Timo Scheider then. Now, bear in mind, to the best of our knowledge, we're looking at those tyres. He's running on slick tyres. So now he needs to get that banker in, as indeed does every driver first running in this elongated Q2 session. They've got to get their times in jolly quickly as Timo Scheider now back onto a part of the original oval here before he dives back, the left-hander, back onto the infield part of the circuit.
The crossover point is going to come if it is starting to just spot with rain a little bit, as to whether that rain starts to make a difference before the slick tyres are up to temperature, because if the slicks are warm, they can still just about overcome an ever so slightly damp circuit. If the water we think is in the air becomes any greater in quantity, that's going to take over from the warmth and therefore the usability of the tyres.
Okay. Well,
but we're not there yet.
No.
The slicks will still work for now, once they're up to temperature.
Well, you can see the sector times that Scheider has put in, and he's given it absolutely everything he can. Timo Scheider then, the first to show, as he's back onto the original oval once again with the run up to the timing line. Timo Scheider is going to give us our benchmark time, a 1:24.28 from Timo Scheider.
And then Edo Mortara goes through behind him, and Jamie Green is looking quick. Jamie, of course, who was the man with a lap time in the first element of qualifying, comes over the timing line now. Paul de Resta goes quickest, though, at 1:20.3. Jamie Green's lap time puts him fifth, and Adrian Tombe, who's had a pole position this year, remember, at the start of the season at Hockenheim, goes quickest. Maxime Martin goes fastest. Now, remember, I've been saying over the course of the season that Maxime Martin is somebody who drives according to grip. I just wonder whether these might be Martin-esque conditions.
Oh, possibly so. So, there we can see Paffett's time, Ekstrom's time as well, and Paffett goes quickest.
And you're going to have also Miguel Molina going near the top as well, the Spaniard in the Audi, because he's done the absolute best in Sector 1.
But now it's Ekstrom at the top of the first sub 120, a 1:19.527. Now that is a full 5/10 off of Paffett's previous best time.
And it shows that the tyres are getting better, they're getting hotter, they're getting more grip out of them, so they're still working, despite our fears that there might still be the odd spot of rain around. I don't actually think the weather conditions are going downhill. I think that's okay, but what you are now seeing with the tyres up to temperature and therefore the road getting quicker is potentially one of those sessions where the last man over the timing line with the flag comes out is fastest.
Now, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the graphics indicate there those that are below the out red graphic on the left-hand side of your screen, because it is now 17 minutes we've got left on this session as Molina now goes quickest. Those are the guys that could be going out at the end of this session. Oh!
Mortara. Oh, so nearly sideswipes Rockenfeller. That was a bit touch and go. Thankfully, more going than touching, but they have survived the experience. Daniel Juncadella here is on for a quick lap as well. Timo Scheider's done the absolute best in Sector 1. Daniel Juncadella is, at the moment, the only man without a lap time next to his name, but he's done, as you can see, an absolute best in Sector 1, a personal best in Sector 2, and Juncadella for Mercedes goes fastest on a 1:18.781. It's getting quicker all the time.
There's huge chunks of time being taken out per lap, and there's huge chunks of grass being taken into the inside of that Audi now.
So there's a pit stop due to make sure all is well, and Rockenfeller got away with that. He had a charmed life there. Now Scheider, absolute best in Sector 1, a little bit pops in Sector 2. Paffett's done the absolute best in Sector 1 now behind Scheider, but this should put Timo back up at the pointy end. He's 6th, and he comes across the timing line. He's now 7th, and he goes 2nd fastest. He's in the 18s as well. So Juncadella and Scheider are the only two below 1:19.
Okay, so Juncadella 1:18.781, Timo Scheider 1:18.985. A couple of tenths difference between the two there. Car number 3, Augusto Farfus, is under investigation for blocking as we're with Gary Paffett right now. Gary Paffett, who has been doing a fantastic job for Mercedes-Benz in what has been a challenging year for that brand. Altogether, they have worked so very hard to get it back to where it needs to be, and Paffett has been leading that charge. You haven't always seen that on track, to be fair. What can Gary deliver here? He goes P1 with a 1:18.686.
But not for long. The man right behind him, Matthias Ekström, goes into the top slot with an 18.5, and then Juncadella goes even quicker with an 18.3.
It is coming, it's tumbling down, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In terms of lap times, there is our current P1, Danny Juncadella, then in that Mercedes-Benz. Now here is the championship leader, Marco Wittmann, who at the moment, where is he?
He is 19th fastest. Now, bearing in mind that this session has been elongated, but you've taken into it another set of tyres out of Q1. The road is getting quicker and quicker and quicker. If you can do one run early on and then use another set of tyres right at the very end, you're going to be in the box seat.
Okay. Make notes of that, if you will, because that's what we think is going to happen.
Wittmann pits, so he is, so to speak, keeping his powder dry, I think, at the moment. There is more to come from Marco Wittmann, the championship leader. Remember, 4th or better nets him the championship this weekend with 2 races still to go.
Yes, which would be a remarkable achievement for the young man in the Icewatch branded BMW, Marco Wittmann. What a season he has had in DTM. So Juncadella still at the top with Ekström P2, then it's Paffett P3. Good showing once again from Paul de Resta P4.
Now, normally we talk about Q1 as the part of qualifying where it's about not being slow, and Q2 where it's about being quick.
Yeah.
At the moment, with the extra pressure for 22 drivers, it's a very impressive list of names that have managed to get themselves into that top 8, but it's going to shuffle. Those that miss out so far: Farfus, Spengler, Tomczyk, Wehrlein, Molina, Martin, Da Costa, Green, Mortara, Vitoris, Tombe, Wittmann, Müller, Petrov. It ain't going to stay that way, that is for sure, and we have got 13 minutes to go, so it's time for a new set of tyres, but I don't think people want to use them too soon. Ideally, you want to be still with life left in those tyres at the very end of the session.
Well, we were seeing at the end of the free practice session, people changing tyres at a ridiculous time, right at the very end of the session. They've got no hope of getting them up to temperature and putting in a strong lap. Okay, I accept that was only free practice, so they don't want to make the same mistake here, do they, and put them on too late to be able to get the benefit out of them right at the close of the session.
Yeah, they need to work back from the time the flag comes out to when they need to pit, and the strategists on the pit wall, on the so-called Pratt purchase, will be doing that. Augusto Farfus and Pascal Wehrlein both being reported to the stewards. So it was blocking, wasn't it, for Farfus? It was a pit infringement for Wehrlein. The stewards will have a look at that during the course of the afternoon. So it may well be that wherever Farfus and Wehrlein end up, there's an adjunct to the story.
Well, that's possible. Bruno Spengler improves by 3 places, but it's only P10 for Bruno Spengler, as you can see there, that 1:19.116. Only gives P10 for Bruno Spengler, which, as we speak at the moment, most definitely would not be enough.
No, indeed. And in the Mercedes garages, there is work going on before they send the cars back out for another run. 12 minutes to go. Mike Rockenfeller is away back down the pit lane. He's just come out of the scrutineering area, so he's not leaving the team. He's leaving the scrutineering bay, and now he heads down the pit lane to return to the team. Mike Rockenfeller, who drives for Ernst Moser's Phoenix squad. Now, Timo Scheider looking quick. He had a really torrid time, didn't he, in Moscow and at the Nürburgring. Here, he's looking a bit more racy, double champion. 7th fastest is Scheider. This should be a good lap. Absolute best sector 2, personal best sector 1. Add them together, he goes 2nd fastest, just under a 10th down on Daniel Jonquerea.
So 1:18.413 that time from Timo Scheider. Now here's one of the drivers that's being reported to the stewards then, and it is Augusto Farfus, who's languishing down there at the moment, P12. So Augusto Farfus, and we have 11 minutes left in this session. Green sector 1, purple sector 2. So this could be pretty good from Augusto Farfus.
They should bring him into the mix, pending any penalties, because he's 12th at the moment, but he is 2/10 down in sector 1. That's the problem. Has he made up more than 2/10 in sectors 2 and 3 combined to go fastest? The answer is no. He's only 5th fastest. He lost out against his own time in sector 3, and even though he was good-ish in sector 1, it wasn't good enough.
Right.
Now, Mike Rockenfeller is 9th. He's the first one to have missed the cut, so he should be able to get back in, I would have thought.
This is a great onboard shot from Jamie Green, who's gone purple in sector 1. So Jamie Green's Audi, you can see there, goes green in sector 2. So Jamie Green needs to absolutely have a stellar sector 3, doesn't he? Jamie Green, where is he down the order? P18 at the moment, as you can see on the graphics to the very left there, as you see the Jamie Green name. What can he do?
Trouble is, he's 3/10 down in the middle sector. It's a personal best, but he's 3/10 away from the absolute best of Farfus, so he's got to pull something really big out of the bag now.
Well, just a couple of seconds, we are going to find out what Jamie Green can deliver. Well, he can go 5th fastest, which would keep him in to the next part of qualifying, but...
and that's the important thing, isn't it?
Of course.
Also of significance is that Matthias Ekström is 3rd, and Wittmann has still not done a proper lap time, really. He's done a 19.7 as his first effort, but he's done no more than that. So 9.5 minutes to go. Can Wittmann get himself into the top 8? Ordinarily, you'd say, yes, of course he can, but he's not yet delivered the lap time that will do that.
So there's some pressure beginning to build then for Marco Wittmann. We're with Nico Müller now, P12. Is his position, is he going to improve on that? He does by 3 places, goes up to P9, but P9 would not be enough.
He misses out by 28 thousandths of a second.
Right, here comes Marco Wittmann then, saying that he's under perhaps a little bit of pressure. He's got 9 minutes left to run. Marco Wittmann, the championship leader. P4 or better is going to be enough for him in the race tomorrow. He goes P4 on the timing screen.
Oh, that's that problem solved then, says Marco, just in case you were worried about me. Worry no more. Of course, with 8.5 minutes still to run, there is the possibility that others towards the end might go faster and nudge him down the order, so we need to see that. He is only 5 thousandths ahead of Gary Paffett, and we've just had Jamie Green improve once more to go up to 4th fastest ahead of Wittmann. Farfus is now on the bubble because he's down to 8th quickest. Vitoris looks good, 2 personal bests on this lap in the Mercedes, and he goes over the timing line 10th, a 1:18.8. Martin Tomczyk is the slowest. He didn't do any proper running at all in the brief free practice session that we had, and Tomczyk is struggling. Adrian Tombe is 21st, and I would suggest struggling as well. And Bruno Spengler is 18th. So it's another of those sessions where there are some big names languishing.
P19 is where Robert Wickens is at the moment. 26.3 sector 1, 19.6 sector 2. So Robert Wickens then, as he heads up towards the timing line here, he goes fastest, a 1:18.267 from Robert Wickens.
And an interesting lap that, because they
Didn't
were all
see
personal,
that coming. Yeah.
all personal best, but no absolute best. But it was just very well strung together. So it was a consistently quick lap. It wasn't peaking and troughing across the different sectors. He is there by 13 thousandths of a second. So he's only a Nat semi-crotchet ahead of Timo Scheider, and we have got 7 minutes and change on the clock.
Paul Di Resta improves just 1 place, so 1:18.759. Also under investigation for blocking now is Martin Tomczyk.
What are you, the court reporter or something?
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, the stewards are going to be busy. They've had nothing to do all day apart from look at different versions of a timetable, and now they're earning their corn, aren't they?
Pascal Wehrlein bangs in a lap time that gives him P5 at the moment. So the order, which is changing constantly, it's Wickens, Scheider, Juncadella, Ekström, Wehrlein, Rockenfeller, Green, Wittmann now is on the bubble.
And not only that, he, as Timo Glock goes to the top of the times, is out of the top 8. I was about to say he's the top BMW, but he's not, because Timo Glock, and there he is now the fastest, an 18.141. So Wittmann does have to start digging deeper, doesn't he? Spengler comes over the timing line. He's not had a great session thus far, and he's just improved, but only to 13th fastest.
Now, interestingly, Scheider has just pulled into the pit lane. Can see that from our vantage point up here, as we've got 2 green sectors for Gary Paffett. I wonder if Scheider is putting another set on to use in the final 6 minutes of this qualifying session. This part of qualifying, as we're watching Gary Paffett now back out onto the oval.
This should get him into the top 8, because he's managed to do a lap in the sectors that, if you string it all together, should just about compute to nudge him into the top 8. Let's see whether it bears out that way. Yes, he goes 4th quickest, so Gary Paffett is in the top 8.
Well, all the drama that surrounds this qualifying session is really building to a crescendo, and of course we've still got Q1 to come. So Robert Wickens, who is P2 at the moment, not had a brilliant second sector here. Go on board with him, the infield section of this incredible circuit here at the Lausitzring, the Euro Speedway.
He's on it again here, isn't he? Wickens quickens.
As he heads towards the timing line, I will deal with that in the way it should be dealt with, by moving on. Robert Wickens, well, a 1:19.149 doesn't improve his 1:18.267, which gave him that P2 position. So Timo Glock is quickest. Vitaly Petrov out of the pit lane, just saw him there as Robert Wickens went past. Here's Gary Paffett that we zoom in on now.
And just to let you know that Wittmann has pitted, and they're going to put a fresh set of slicks onto his Ice Watch BMW. Mike Rockenfeller is ready to rejoin as well. Wittmann is on his way, and so he has got enough time left on a fresh set of Hankooks to get himself back into the top 8. Ekstrom is now 8th. He is on the bubble. Ekstrom, remember, along with this man, Edo Mortara, tied equal in the championship 2nd, both for Audi, and Audi, the one of the 3 brands that's not yet had a win.
Edo Mortara, we're watching right now, P17 at the moment, a 26.3 first sector, 19.7 second sector, as he nails the Audi now, heading towards the timing line. What can Edo Mortara deliver? Well, it's P10, which is not enough, a 1:18.537, but the margin so, as Paffett's in with presumably a new set going on to the Euronics Mercedes. We've got 3 3/4 minutes left. There is the Audi team boss looking on.
And the scrutineers making sure that the tyres are those that have been allocated. Now, Timo Scheider was a bit down in Sector 1, but the absolute best in Sector 2 added to whatever he does in Sector 3, and he goes quickest of all, a 1:18.059. And you've got to say that was a lap that could have been even better, because he was down on his earlier best in the first sector.
So we are reaching the sharp end of this part of qualifying. We have just 3 minutes and counting left to run. Scheider, that man, is top of the timing screen at the moment with a 1:18.059. So Antonio Felix da Costa, we're watching it. So Scheider, Glock, Wickens, the 1, 2, 3.
Scheider is on an even better lap, because now he has done the absolute best in Sector 1, but he's only done that just after Paul de Resta had done the previous absolute best. And so de Resta, who is 15th, could be about to magic something up here. Da Costa, 11th, not good enough, but it does help him up the order, of course. It's not just about being in the top 8. If you can't get in the 8, you want to be at least 9th, because that's a better place, clearly, for the race start tomorrow.
On board with Christian Vitoris now. There is that car in full. 26.1 Sector 1, 19.6 Sector 2.
Right, where else to look? De Resta is on a quick lap, so Jean Cadea, so too is Wehrlein, but Marco Wittmann has done a personal and an absolute best in Sectors 1 and 2, and there are just 2 minutes of Q2 to go.
Here comes Christian Vitoris, and he goes 5th fastest.
Here comes Wittmann. This could be top.
Marco Wittmann, championship leader. Goes P3, 1:17.981.
Misses out by just under 3/10. Now the other quick lap to come should be from Paul de Resta. Also you've got Wehrlein with an absolute and a personal best, and you're looking at him now. Ekstrom up to second, almost unnoticed. So it's Scheider, Ekstrom, Audi 1-2, Juncadella 3, Wittmann 4, Green 5, Glock 6, Vitoris 7. There's a yellow flag now out. Somebody has had a drama, and that is going to affect life.
It's Vitaly Petrov, I think, that's gone round.
Okay.
He's got it back round again, and he's underway. But we have got, yes, the yellow disappears.
Wehrlein third, and yeah, you're right, the yellow flag zone is no more. This could well be the replay of it. It is. Lots of speed onto the damp part of the circuit, and round comes the back.
Well, Vitaly got it going very, very quickly, so the yellow was only out for a moment or two. So, in all of that, the order is, with less than a minute remaining, Scheider, Ekstrom, Wehrlein, Juncadella, Wittmann, Green, Glock, Vitoris. There is the offending car, if you like, of Vitaly Petrov that caused the momentary yellow.
There are still people pushing on. Vitoris, Rockenfeller, and also Petrov, after his drama, have done good things in sectors. So we're not done yet. There is still the potential that that top 8 could shuffle around a little bit. Vitoris went through. That was a slightly slower lap. But everybody crossing the timing line now has got another lap to go. And Gary Paffett has done the absolute best in Sector 1. Paffett starts his last lap 12th. There's Spengler, who is also struggling because Spengler is down 20th. Very, very bad qualifying.
Yes, we're watching Bruno Spengler there. Well, personals in Sector 1 and Sector 2, whether that will be enough to elevate him up the order from his current P20. The one we're keeping an eye on, of course, is Gary Paffett, that you quite rightly said.
But he's 3/10 down in the middle sector, so may not work out. Spengler should be an improver to personal best, but is it enough? Farfus also is on a quick lap. Flag for Spengler, who goes through, and the time now comes up. And where does that put him? 16th fastest.
Paffett goes 5th fastest.
Okay, that knocks Wittmann down to 6th. Any other improvers? Molina 7th. Here comes Rockenfeller, who is 11th, 2 personal bests. If he can get ahead of Wittmann, that's all good for the opposition in the championship, namely his 2 Audi Mark mates, but Rockenfeller does improve, but only to 10th, an 18-1. Farfus, 2 personal bests, and he is penultimate. It's been a lousy qualifying for the man that topped free practice. Augusto Farfus here has got to do something absolutely amazing to get within striking distance of the front of the grid. He comes across the timing line. Now he ends up 15th. He had been nudged down to slowest, but 15th for Farfus is a long, long way down. Now, are we done? Has everybody else that's on a quick lap taken the flag? I think pretty much they have. And so Wittmann 6th, but Ekstrom 2nd. Where did Mortara end up? 13th. So Ekstrom, after a really duff qualifying at the Nürburgring, has turned it around here.
Yes, and bear in mind the situation with regards to Ekstrom and Mortara in the points, tied on numbers. So we have Timo Scheider, Matthias Ekstrom, Pascal Wehrlein, Danny Juncadella, Gary Paffett, Marco Wittmann, Miguel Molina, and Jamie Green are top 8. So as the cars all into the pit lane, of course, another session of qualifying to come for the fastest 8. We lose Glock, Rockenfeller, Vitoris, Wickens, Mortara, Petrov, Farfus, Martin, Spengler, Tombe, Da Costa, Muller, Tomczyk, and de Resta. But the margins, David, so close.
Well, Paffett to Wittmann is 1/1000th of a second. It cannot be closer in the 3-digit timing that we get. So just 1/1000th of a second. Paffett 5th, and then Wittmann 6th. But having said all of that, once you're in the top 8, it doesn't really matter about the times.
Here's confirmation then. Timo Scheider topped that part of qualifying with a 1:17.699. Then it was Ekstrom, Wehrlein, Juncadella, Paffett, Wittmann, Molina, and Jamie Green. First of those we see out, Timo Glock. Also Mike Rockenfeller, Christian Vitoris, Robert Wickens. And on the second page, it's Edo Mortara, Vitaly Petrov, Augusto Farfus, Maxime Martin. Some big names going out here. Bruno Spengler, Adrian Tombe, Antonio Felix da Costa, Nico Muller, Martin Tomczyk, and Paul de Resta.
The last time I mentioned Paul de Resta, he just found the absolute best in the first sector. He ends up penultimate on the grid. Of course, Joey Hand will be behind him, but effectively, with those that have done a proper qualifying time, there he is, a very frustrated-looking Paul di Resta, ends up at the back of the grid, effectively 22nd of the 23 cars. Augusto Farfus will not be best pleased. He was on the podium here last year, but 15th on the grid. Now, dependent upon weather and strategy, you never know what he might be able to do in the race, but also there is this Damocletian investigation for blocking.
Yes, and that involves, well, a number of cars. Augusto Farfus. Who else have we got in there? Also, Tomczyk and Pascal Wehrlein under investigation as well. We're looking at the Paul di Resta car there. Martin Tomczyk.
Yeah, 21st. And he was just under a second away from the top. And I suspect, as you look at Nico Müller, who was 20th, that if Verena gets a chance to talk to some of the drivers that have been bumped out, they will cite the fact they've had so little running as really one of the key problems. So we said as qualifying got underway, it was going to be a lottery. Antonio Felix da Costa, of course, he was always going to struggle, new to the DTM and therefore new to the circuit as well to an extent. He would have raced here in other categories in single-seaters, but not in the DTM. He ends up 19th. That shot of him was on wet tyres. Bruno Spengler, 17th, also here seen on wets. Adrian Tombay, 18th between the BMWs. Maxime Martin, a bit disappointing as well, 16th fastest. I did say at the start of the session that these conditions might be to his liking, but actually in the end, not. But of course, although he's raced here in a GT car, not in a DTM car, so again he needed a running. Farfus only ends up 15th, and despite his spin, Vitaly Petrov ends the session.
Has got more used to the DTM. We're reaching the conclusion of the DTM for 2014. He's got more used to the car, and the car has been improving as well.
Indeed, it is of course yet another new circuit for him, and he's had little running, and yet he gets his best qualifying of the season. So Petrov 14th, Mortara 13th, Wickens 12th, here Christian Vitoris 11th. And remember, all of these missed the cut. Mike Rockenfeller improve right at the very end, but only as far as 10th. The reigning champions had a really frustrating season. But let us go to the pit lane and join Verena.
I'm here with Bruno Spengler. Bruno, P17, what was the toughest thing today about the qualifying?
Well, the toughest thing today is that, I think we again did not really start on a good basis with our car like we did a few races this year, and it was the same for everybody, and not a lot of free practice for everybody, and I think some started with a good basis and some other with a less good basis, and we started with a pretty bad basis, I would have to say. So then, we just run behind the time, and then we were trying to push in the quali, but we just couldn't go any quicker. So we have to see tonight in the data what was wrong and what we can improve for the next qualifying in the next race in Zandvoort, because that's our goal now. Tomorrow for the race, from P17, unless there is some crazy conditions out there, which I hope. It's going to be tough, but you never know what can happen. So I'm ready for the fight tomorrow, and then we see.
Right, thank you very much, Bruno. Back to you guys.
Always get a soundbite from Bruno Spengler, don't we?
He's a good ambassador for BMW as well. Look, we've said this about other drivers. He doesn't moan about the team. He accepts it on the chin. And Spengler, as we saw at the Hungaroring, is somebody that never gives up fighting. And even though it's not a great qualifying, he will certainly give it all in the race and see what progress can be made. And the point he makes about hoping for crazy conditions, well, remember what happened at Ossersleben, which was just the wildest race we've had in a long, long time. Anything can happen. As you saw, that was a race won by a pit lane starter. A little bit of debris flies there. And Martin Tomczyk, somebody else that's had a frustrating qualifying session. He's now with Verena.
Yeah, very frustrating in P21. Why this morning you were the only one who didn't actually go out in the free practice? Why?
Yeah, unfortunately we had a technical failure on the car right when I went out, and then I had immediately to come back. So it was 15 minutes lost time for me. Especially when you don't have any free practice. It was very bad luck for me today as well in qualifying. I think you could learn quite a lot out of that 15 minutes. I couldn't do that, so at the end 21. As you see, all the others are struggling as well, so it's very tricky at the moment to drive. So the whole day fits quite well together.
Let's hope for a better day for tomorrow. Thank you very much. Back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Verena. We are into the final part of qualifying, and interesting how one of the most experienced racers out there, Gary Paffett, decides to go out very, very early on. But just before we get on with this session, let's hear from Paul di Resta, who I too think will be very disappointed, actually.
I bet he will be. P22 is very frustrating. What were you struggling with most? I mean, obviously you all didn't have very much data from the 15 minutes this morning.
Yeah, unfortunately I made a mistake on the last set of tyres on the first time lap. One of these things when the conditions are the way they are, and then the next lap there was a yellow flag in the middle sector, and the car was in the middle of the track, so unable to improve upon the lap before, and you need to be key in getting the lap times done when the conditions are good.
Well, thank you very much, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Verena.
Frustrating for Paul di Resta that therefore the car that cost him the chance to improve was another Mercedes, because that was Vitaly Petrov he was referring to, that he found in the middle of the road.
Interesting the point he made, though. You need to you need to be in there early on in the session and bank one. And as I was saying, just before we cross to Verena and Paul di Resta there, Gary Paffett the first to leave the pit lane in this session of qualifying.
Marco Wittmann leaving the pit lane now. He goes through the first corner, but on the inside of the ADAC curve, through the pit out part. Now works his way on the infield. Gary Paffett, though, will be the first driver really to set a benchmark time within Q3. So 9th to 23rd, barring any penalties post-qualifying, are set. This last 11 minutes will sort out the top 8 on the grid. And a 17.699 is the best lap that we've had thus far. That was out of Timo Scheider in Q2. So Gary Paffett, well, of course he does the absolute best in Sector 1 because he's one of only 2 drivers that's got there thus far. It's the lap time that we need to really be concerned with relative to everybody else. But as each car goes through the first sector, so other improvements are found. Wehrlein is quicker than Paffett in Sector 1, and Juncker is quicker than both.
So that tells its own story as we continue to watch the Euronics liveried Mercedes-Benz of Gary Paffett then heading around the Lausitzring circuit here. This is the final part of what has been an extremely dramatic qualifying session. Dramatic because it's been shortened somewhat, and he heads towards the timing line now, and he will give us our first time, which is a 1:18.291. Timo Scheider is next, though he's just been bumped by Pascal Wehrlein. And Daniel Juncker now goes quickest with a 1:18.018.
One of the 3 Mercedes drivers, and he runs very wide, and that ruins his next lap against 4 Audis and only 1 BMW. So like we talked about Marco Wittmann in qualifying at the Nürburgring, upholding the brand honour, he's doing it again here. Yes. And it could be that he ends up at the very front of the grid with the other BMWs 9th and lower. Once again, you're finding a driver that makes a difference to that car. Matthias Ekström, meantime, needs to get himself onto the front of the grid to keep championship hopes alive, and he goes through and goes fastest on a 17.884.
So at the moment then, Ekström quickest. We're on board with Marco Wittmann now, championship leader. As you've heard David say, P4 or better in the race will be enough for Marco Wittmann to become the utter star of 2014 as he heads towards the timing line now. Green in the first 2 sectors, and well, a 1:18.143 is only good enough for P3 on the grid
thus far, but he'll get another run, won't he, before the end? So that's his banker lap, if you like. So Ekström is the only one in the 17s, a 17.884. We've not yet had a proper lap out of Scheider nor Jamie Green, but Jamie is circulating, and Timo Scheider is currently driving down the pit lane. There he is indeed. You can see him as you look down from the top of the grandstand where the camera is. There is Matthias Ekström. Looks rejuvenated this weekend, doesn't he? He really was struggling at the Nürburgring, but this is the Ekström, and okay, he's done a lot of miles around here, but this is the Ekström that you anticipate seeing.
Of course. Well, 1:17.884 gives him P1 at the moment. I don't think these sector times will reveal a quicker lap. 1:17.876. So Ekström, Juncker, Wittmann, Paffett, Wehrlein, Molina, Timo Scheider.
Ekström was quicker again, wasn't he? That at 17.876, slightly faster, but Jamie Green here has done the absolute best in Sector 1. Frustrating season for Jamie. We've seen a lot of speed, but it's never quite translated into results for him, so maybe things can change here. He has in his pretty long DTM career had 8 wins, but never won at the Lausitzring. Maybe it could change this weekend. So absolute best, personal best for him. But before he gets to the line, let's see what Daniel Juncadella can do.
So here is Daniel Juncadella then. Currently P2. What can he pull out now as he crosses the timing line? Well, it's 1:18.107. So stays P2. This is Jamie Green. You can see purple in sector 1, green in sector 2. Jamie Green, here comes a lap time from him then. It's a 1:17.972, so he now goes second fastest. You're absolutely right. He was really nailing that. And time for another lap, of course. We've got 5 minutes left remaining in this final session of qualifying. More rubber going on to the Gary Paffett Mercedes. You can see there at the moment the session being led by Matthias Ekström. Then it's Jamie Green, Daniel Juncadella, Marco Wittmann is P4. This man, Gary Paffett, P5. Then it's Wehrlein Molina and Timo Scheider. And interestingly, in comes Ekström as well. So 4.5 minutes as we await Gary Paffett to head out. Back out onto the track. Now he's pointing at something in the side of the car there. So Gary Paffett then does now leave the pit lane with 4 minutes remaining. Marco Wittmann has been in as well. It's Ekström, Green, Juncadella, Wittmann, Paffett, Wehrlein, Molina and Timo Scheider with under 4 minutes left to run as Juncadella steps that back out as he leaves the pit lane as well. In comes Jamie Green. Under 4 minutes remaining. A 1:17.876 at the moment is the fastest time. That time set by Matthias Ekström. This man is second fastest on a 1:17.972 with 3.5 minutes left. He goes for another set of rubber as well.
And now if you're out on track, then you shouldn't have to worry about anybody getting in the way, should you? Because with so many people heading for another set of tyres, now could be quite a good time to put a lap in unaffected by traffic.
I think it's going to get fraught and frantic up the top as we head towards the end of this final part of qualifying here. The DTM at Lausitzring with just over 3 minutes left. We're watching Miguel Molina here as he rounds the final turn 12 here at the Lausitzring on the old existing oval, heads towards the timing line. And Molina goes fastest with a 1:17.786.
Now 2 3/4 minutes of the session still to go. Pascal Wehrlein has now done an absolute and a personal best. And again, there's no traffic around him. Of course, this is a fairly long lap anyway. It's just under 3.5 kilometres, so it's one of the longer laps. And with only 8 cars circulating at any one time in the session, traffic should not be an issue. Wehrlein could get himself here to the top of the times for Mercedes. He goes over the timing line. He does go fastest on a 1:17.547.
Now, that's a reasonable margin, isn't it? Couple of tenths there. Here comes Timo Scheider. What can Timo Scheider do? Timo Scheider can go second fastest with a 1:17.761. 2 tenths away from the Wehrlein time of 1:17.547. Here comes Matthias Ekström heading towards the timing line. 4th fastest at the moment. Now he goes second fastest with a 1:17.604. Said it was going to be fraught and frantic towards the end of this qualifying session, and that is playing out here. Marco Wittmann, the championship leader, is P7 at the moment. Gary Paffett is P8. Here is Daniel Juncadella, who is P6. Bit of a shoddy sector 1, I think, and a better sector 2. I don't know whether, well, he's got to pull something magic out of the bag in sector 3.
Shoddy is 2 tenths, but I grant you he's lost time and he can ill afford to do that. And under investigation is Molina for not looking after the pace of the car under a yellow flag zone. Juncadella across the timing line. 4th, he did go quicker, but it could have been even better as you made that point about sector 1.
Jamie Green now, who is currently P6. So what can Jamie Green do? We've got 1 minute and counting in this final part of qualifying here at the Lausitzring as Jamie Green rounds turn 12 and heads towards the timing line. Green goes third fastest.
Okay, and Wittmann is still only 7th, and Paffett is 8th. And Wittmann not looking as though he's going to be able to respond. Matthias Ekström across the timing line. The lap time is not an improvement, so he stays 2nd. But he's got one more lap to go because, of course, there's still half a minute on the clock. So he squeezed another lap out of this. Now, can Wittmann get across the line for one last go? Molina, 6th. He should just about escape. Yes, he will. 20 seconds on the clock. Makes his way up towards the timing line. That lap is not an improvement, so it keeps him 6th. There are very few sector improvements to be found. Wittmann is a 19.1. He's over a second off his best, but he has squeezed another lap out of the session. Maybe, though, this set of tyres has now just lost its edge slightly. The flag is out, Dave.
So we have still cars that are out there on a lap. Here is Pascal Wehrlein. Can he improve? He's 1:17.547. Gave him P1. Well, it's a 1:17.754 that time around, so Pascal Wehrlein doesn't improve, but what a great showing from Pascal Wehrlein. Timo Scheider now, well, a 1:18.089. Who have we got still out there circulating? Wehrlein, 1:17.547 at the top at the moment. Flag is out. It's only those that manage to potentially squeeze another lap in.
And Pascal Wehrlein's first DTM pole position and a Mercedes pole position to boot, which is perhaps something nobody would have predicted at the start of the day.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, Pascal Wehrlein then. And don't know whether now is a good time to mention the fact that our championship leader is, well, surprisingly further down the order than I expected. P7 for Marco Wittmann. And, well, as the celebrations go on there, as you would quite rightly expect for Pascal Wehrlein.
Was Wehrlein not under investigation for the start of Q1?
I think you're right, and I have to say, I was looking at the timing screen, looking for that car number 25, and that message has gone away from the screen now. And now it might be that there have been so many messages after.
I think that's what's happened, yeah. It's just scrolled through, hasn't it?
Yeah,
but
I think he was under investigation.
So it might be that the story doesn't end here, but for now, Marco Wittmann, champion-elect, and I've been doing some crude maths towards the end of the session. I think Marco Wittmann will become, if he wins it, the youngest ever DTM champion. I'll need to double check, but my feeling is that he'll be the youngest ever. He ends up 7th. This, Dave, is how the top 8 looks.
It's Pascal Wehrlein at the moment, right at the top, with Matthias Ekström P2, then Jamie Green, Timo Scheider, Daniel Juncadella, Miguel Molina, Marco Wittmann, and Gary Paffett. That is the first 4 rows of the grid sorted for the race for tomorrow. As we look at the turbine that is behind the main grandstand here, that is here at the Lausitzring. Now, there were times earlier in the day where we couldn't see that turbine going round. So low was the cloud and so dense was the fog as Pascal Wehrlein climbs out of his car and, well, he's absolutely delighted with that.
And really, he's had a tough time in the DTM because he was plucked, wasn't he, at the 11th hour from the FIA Formula 3 European Championship last year after the sort of late retirement, if you like, of Ralf Schumacher from the DTM into this sort of car. Mercedes feeling that they wanted somebody from single-seaters who knew about aero rather than one-make saloons or GT cars like Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland, for example. And it's been a tough time for Pascal Wehrlein, but he's, in that session, underlined his ability and in a car that people don't think is the best of the 3. Matthias Ekström 2nd, Jamie Green 3rd, Timo Scheider 4th, Daniel Juncadella 5th, Miguel Molina 6th, Marco Wittmann 7th, Gary Paffett 8th, is, by the standards of 2014, a very unusual looking top 8.
Yes, I would agree with that. So 1:17.547 in the end was the time that was the quickest, and it went the way of this man, as we can see him walking towards our camera now. Pascal Wehrlein, 1:17.547 gives him, well, provisional pole position, doesn't it? Pending, as you rightly said, I was convinced we'd seen a number 25 on our message screen with regards to being investigated. Well, we will see what happens and what comes out of that.
So he's congratulated by the Mercedes team. Good job. Indeed it was. So Pascal Wehrlein, a 17.5, plays Ekström's 17.6. Barely anything really between them. But there's the man of the moment, Pascal Wehrlein's first DTM pole, Mercedes' third pole of the season. But Jamie Green will be well chuffed with his qualifying effort in the Hoffman Group Audi, because he is going to be third on the grid. Ideally placed, therefore, to back up Matthias Ekström for points in the championship and try and keep both of them, and others indeed, ahead of Marco Wittmann, who finds himself with tougher work to do with no BMWs up there to help him. Matthias Ekström second. And so he comes here a long way back, but second equal in the championship. Can this be a significant weekend to keep alive his title hopes? He certainly wants that to be the case. But Pascal Wehrlein set the fastest time in qualifying, and it's a Mercedes that tops the times at the end of a very unusual qualifying session. Let's go and join Verena.
Yes. I'm here with Jamie Green. Now, the summer breaks seem to have really done well for you. P3, how do you feel about that? And I mean, that's a good position for tomorrow's race as well.
Yeah, I'm well happy, to be honest. Qualifying's been pretty decent for me the last few races. I've been in the top 6 the last 2-3 races, and again today. So, you know, that's where you need to be to get good race results. So hopefully, if I keep out of trouble tomorrow, then I can get a good result. That's what's definitely needed.
And now, I mean, even though we had a short free practice today, you got a lot of data, so you can work with that well for tomorrow, right?
Well, to be honest, the only running we got was in changeable conditions. You know, it was never fully wet or dry, so it was a strange day. I spent most of the day sitting in the truck, so to get in the car was nice, but it was tough because the conditions were never the same. So I think, you know, everybody's in the same situation, so it's tough for all of us because we haven't been able to work on setup and stuff. But I think that's why I'm happy, because the team obviously gave me a good car from the outset, and that was the key.
So let's see what the weather god brings us for tomorrow.
Absolutely, it looks like it could be interesting.
Thank you so much, and back to you guys.
You can rely on an Englishman to talk about the weather, can't you? Interesting, he says, and he's absolutely right. Pascal Wehrlein is the man who, for the moment, can celebrate the top time in that session. Matthias Ekström, Jamie Green, second and third, but Jamie having a good qualifying run, gets himself up there to the pointy end of the grid. Now, quite a few drivers in that session being investigated not only for pit infringements, but also for failing to manage track limits and also yellow flags. Now, what about Marco Wittmann's story? He's only 7th, Verena.
Now, this one's going to be really interesting, Marco. P7 today in the qualifying. However, as you know, tomorrow it's enough to be 4th place and you can already snatch the title. What does your gut feeling tell you?
Well, actually, I don't think too much about tomorrow. For us, was a pretty difficult day, especially with these conditions, with just 50 minutes free practice time. It not really helped. I think it was more or less a lottery who had the best setup from the beginning of qualifying. Nobody really could set up the car because in free practice we run under wet conditions. So it was pretty difficult, and yeah, for us a bit disappointing to be in general quite with a poor performance today. But I hope we can swap this tomorrow.
And I'm sure you're going to fight like crazy tomorrow.
For sure.
Right, thank you, Marco. Back to you guys.
Thanks very much, Verena. I just wonder, actually, with whether we'll see a better performance out of Marco Wittmann because he's starting further down the order. Do you know what I mean? He's got something to chase rather than... you know, I'm not trying to make it easy for him, but I just wonder if it might play into his hands a little bit.
In a funny way, there's less pressure because it doesn't happen tomorrow for him. He's got 2 more races still to go. It's not like this is the last round and he's having to think about points. Often if you drive for points rather than places, you give away too many, and the danger is that you're trying to finish in the top 4, you end up finishing 6th because you've kind of outfoxed yourself and you've let too many people through. There's less pressure to an extent. Yes, he'd love to win it here. He'd probably love to win by winning the race to go with winning the championship. But if it doesn't happen tomorrow, there's Zandvoort, hey, there's even Hockenheim still to go.
Of course, and you and I would love it to go to Hockenheim, of course. Pascal Wehrlein then, a 1:17.547. He tops that chart with Eki, then Jamie Green, then Timo Scheider, Danny Juncadella, Miguel Molina. Marco Wittmann then, the man we've just heard from, is P7 as the second page of the combined result from qualifying comes up there. And right at the very bottom there, Joey Hand, who was out on the gravel during what was Q1, and he took no further part in qualifying, and the rest there that you can see. Now, Jamie Green was mentioning there that it's going to be very interesting with regards to tomorrow and the weather, but before we talk about that, let's hear from Matthias Ekström, who's with Verena.
Yes, Eki, Now, it's been a while that you had good qualifying. Today certainly was a good qualifying with P2. Good feeling about tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to qualify in the front row, no discussion. But what I'm most surprised, I feel I do nothing different, but the car likes what I do much more than normally, because after the test we did here, we changed some things. And on the test, I were pretty confident. And also before the race, I was pretty sure if it could stay consistent, it would be nice to see. And at least it looks like it paid out in qualifying. So now it's just to the race to be proven.
So tomorrow for the race, you have a good feeling? I mean, podium is nice. Victory is even nicer.
Spring champagne is pretty nice. I tried it 2 times this year, I bet. But I won one race when I did the World Rallycross Championship. So actually, I'm looking forward more for a win than a podium.
All right, best of luck. Thank you. And let's see, where's Pascal? Pascal! And here's the man who for the first time actually got pole position and is the youngest DTM driver of all times to snatch pole. Congratulations, first of all. You fought so hard. How proud are you?
Yes, very proud. I think we had very tricky conditions. It was really hard outside. There were a few big moments where you nearly lost the car. So at the end, I put it together, we put it together. And yeah, that's the result.
And looking at tomorrow, I know you guys always say, "Oh, I'm not looking at, not concentrating on tomorrow now." But quite frankly, for tomorrow, I mean, from pole position, there is the best chance of actually winning the race. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good starting point. I think tomorrow we have to see the conditions. Yeah, we have to see for sure. The goal is to win the race, but yeah, we see tomorrow.
We'll definitely cross our fingers. Thank you so much. And now back to you.
Verena, it's going to go down legendary. I say, Pascal, over here. Got the man, didn't
Absolutely.
she? Brilliant work.
Absolutely. With a wave and a smile, it's amazing people come running. There are, of course, some rather disappointed people in the pit lane. Mike Rockenfeller is one of them. The reigning champion has not yet had a win. We're still talking about Audi, winless, astonishingly, this season. There has been a kind of victory for them in the early hours of the day because Hans-Jürgen Ab's Formula E team scored victory at the last corner in the first race in China. But it's really the DTM brand that wants a victory this weekend, and it could come because if it's a circuit like this and it's an unusual looking grid and who knows what the weather gods have in store, then it perhaps is going to be a more open race than we had last time out at the Nürburgring. And just interested also to see Matthias Ekström's demeanour. That smile had come back. That was not in evidence at all, was it, at the Nürburgring?
No, you're right. It is the old Eggy back again, or seemingly so, isn't it? Well, there's the man with, well, he's set himself quite a bit of work to do, and as we mentioned earlier, perhaps in a funny sort of way, he's taken the pressure away from himself a bit because he'll be starting from P7, our championship leader, Marco Wittmann, who needs a P4 or better to seal the championship here at the Lausitzring. Of course, in many ways, we all hope it goes to Hockenheim, of course. We want the drama to be maintained all the way to the very end of the DTM 2014 season. But the Ice Power liveried BMW there of Marco Wittmann will start from P7 tomorrow. Well, what will the weather gods do? Only time will tell. It's remained really dank and overcast and cloudy and sort of murky all day today. Let's see what it will be tomorrow. Okay, to the press conference now.
Run number 8 in the DTM season 2014. After the qualifying here at the Lausitzring, for the first time ever in his young career,